I really want to show you guys what I've been working on for a while. Recently I saw a video by Fammy, this one right here, in which she took the Apple iSight camera and the Raspberry Pi Series 2W and one of their camera modules, put it in here using some 3D printed enclosure, and ran like software that would stream the video taken by the camera through USB to your computer. The original project was made by Max Brown. I decided to make it myself. After I had it set up, I realized that there were a few features that I wanted to add myself. So that's what I did. And I hope you guys enjoyed the making of it and maybe use it. So I've already got my iSight disassembled, but if you wanted to follow along, I'll leave a link down below to Kami Wolf, who does a nice teardown video if you need any help disassembling it. I'll start by mentioning the things I changed. The first thing is that the original insert simply had the Raspberry Pi go in here, kind of sandwiched in between, and then you plug it in, which would result in not being able to use the original swivel. The reason I didn't like that is because then the camera can only move as much as the cable twists, and so I wanted to make a way to work with the original swivel. The next thing was that I removed the two micro USB connectors and the HDMI connector because the way I want this to fit in here needs the extra clearance created by removing those. I also wanted to make sure I implemented the use of the original lens, which could open and close like this, and not only would it physically block the sensor from recording, but also it would pause the stream. So no video was actually being fed to the computer, and the activity LED would turn off. So that leads us to the next thing. It has this original activity LED, which I also wanted to use in mine, but there was no space or like support for that in the original project. Lastly, I really liked the idea of having light shine through the back of the camera like it did on old MacBooks. So I added support for another LED to go at the back. And then lastly, the image we'll be installing on here won't be Raspberry Pi OS. That's just running some software that will feed images to your computer as a webcam. It'll instead be the result of a sub-project of this project called Webcam Pi, which was inspired by Show Me Webcam, in which it's a small Linux image with only the things necessary to run the webcam. The benefits of that is that you get significantly faster boot times. Compared to Raspberry Pi, it's about a 15-second difference. Here it's six seconds, but with Raspberry Pi OS, it would take about 20-25 seconds for the camera to be ready on your computer. Lastly, since I removed the micro USB, we'll be using USB-C. It's more convenient, and those will just be soldered to the back of the Raspberry Pi right there. To be able to have this work with the Raspberry Pi inside of here, we will have to cut this bit here and make a guiding hole so that it will still follow the same rotation as if it was held by the two axes. You could also just use a 3D printed version I made, but I'll be just modifying the original since I want to use as many original parts as I can. A list of parts and how to do it will be on the repository for this project, so if you want to follow that, go ahead. And one last thing is that the camera won't fit properly without snipping the corners. Now, just be careful when doing it. There shouldn't be any risk. There's no traces going through this area. I just grabbed some wire cutters and snipped them off and sanded them a bit so they wouldn't be sharp. And now start building it. The first thing I want to do is actually the logo LED. So I've got my soldering iron plugged in. I just gotta grab some wire. Weak. Put this next one in. Perfect. Take it and put it in here with the LED facing the top of this. And it's just a press fit, so. This part I'm gonna do with a regular drill because I don't have a bit small enough for the rotary tool. So, ooh, there's no way I can move that. Hold on. Let's see if this will hold it better. Too small. Let's give this a try. Okay, that's perfect. So we have no side to side sway there. And it follows along the correct path. Now I will say that was kind of challenging, but the bit that I ended up using to make the final hole was a 9/64th of an inch. Next step we're gonna do is to mount the USB-C, which is also this is not as complicated. This 3D printed piece, it actually comes in two pieces. This funny looking thing, which goes into this hole, and this kind of like spacer. This whole part just fits in here by pressing it in. There we go. And then it'll be locked in by the top part. So we put it in here to secure it. Now it doesn't really matter where the USB-C points, you can connect it either way, but this faces this way, the official way, so let's go with that. And then we grab this other piece, and that will go, this has a space here, that space goes this way. Okay, I lied. The space that, the side with the space between the block and the edge goes towards this side. Now don't screw it in all the way, because you still want it to be loose enough to sway side to side. For now, that should be enough. I'll tighten it a little more after. Second to last step will be to put this. This will prevent it from falling in when you plug it in. The way this works is it just has a little slot up here. You put your USB-C PCB in there, just like that. And then the two screws that you took off the firewire connector, you use to just keep this in place. Okay, now our USB-C can't go anywhere, and it moves side to side, so that is perfect. So now we will solder our connections to this. We've got our V, D minus, D plus, and ground in that order. I got too much solder on this first one, so let's try to spread it amongst the other ones. That was more challenging than it should have been, but we've got our joints on there. Now just let's add the wires. Now we've got all 4 wires coming out of it. Very unnecessary lengths, but whatever. And then we are gonna work on our Raspberry Pi. The first thing we need to do is we gotta grab a 5.6K ohm resistor and solder it between pin 26, which should be this one down here, and our ground next to it. Okay, I was mistaken. Pin 26 would be the one left column, 2 from the bottom. So these 2 pins have to be connected with a resistor. Good enough of a connection, and then we're gonna attach our USB-C. So for that, let's go with about this much length. This will leave some slack for us. I've already got some solder on here because I soldered this before, but I'm just gonna put solder to these. So let's start with the 5 volts. Now at this point, I would go ahead and test your Pi just in case anything's wrong with it. I'll test this one and be right back. Okay, now our setup is a little more organized and I tested that the Pi is working. So our next step will be to actually mount this into our enclosure. The way I'm gonna go ahead and do it is I'm gonna first pass these cables up wherever they'll fit so that we can have them available to solder later. think our best way of doing this would be through here. Never mind, through this gap right here. Alright. And then let's do a quick test that our swivel can move. Yep, it can move. Doesn't hit anything. And what we'll be using to like fix this in here will be the original screws that held in the motherboard. So let's go ahead and grab those. Be very careful with this clip right here. I've broken a few on different pies and it's not fun to try to fix. Okay, now our pie is secured in there. The next thing we want to do is secure our swivel. Even though it won't be going anywhere, we'll go ahead and put the screws that came on it. So the way the original came was with this metal little ring and this, I guess, plastic ring. And that would go into this hole. We'll see if that fits in here. Okay, now that we've got it in, just screw this in place. Don't over screw because then you won't be able to actually move the swivel. This seems fine for me. Now, we take the official motherboard and we're gonna snip it. Because what we need is the activity LED. We're gonna add a 330 ohm resistor to it and we're gonna wire it up to the pie. We're also gonna sand it down so that it'll fit better into our enclosure. Okay, that fits in there perfectly. Might peak too high and hit the thing, so let's see if it'll fit into here. Okay, it's got enough clearance. Alright, so we've got the two sides of the LED soldered. Let's do one more test fit to make sure it still works, since this could interfere with the little plastic tab inside. Okay, that slides right past it. Perfect. Okay, the way I'll attach this and the resistor to the board will be, I'll have the 5 volt or 3 volt terminal going from one of the GPIOs, and then the ground, or either one can have the resistor going into the terminal and then to the wire. So the 330 ohm resistor I'm going to put on after the rest is done, once I'm ready to solder all the wires into the board. So for now, this is going aside right here, and a 330 ohm resistor with it. I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be the lens. We are going to have to do a few things to it before we're ready to put the stuff that goes on it. First thing I already did, which is there should be a tiny little tab right there. We're gonna need to cut that off so that it won't interfere with the box on the camera. And then same thing goes for this circular, or like a cylinder. So we're just gonna grab it and snip that right off. There's a small metal piece there, so be careful with it. Next up, we're gonna grab this mount right here, and we're pretty much just gonna snap this into place. It has a bunch of cutouts that will line up with the different shapes on here. So just find the way that it lines up and snap it on right there. There are 3 screws around it that will hold it into this mount. Before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and clean the inside of the lens real quick to make sure no dust is in there when we're done. You'll need one of these tiny little breakout boards for the tiny connector. It's as simple as opening up where the cable goes and slotting it in. Before we actually put that in, let's go ahead and solder another resistor on here. There's really no documentation about how the sensor in here works. So after a lot of probing with the multimeter and some help from Reddit to figure out the data sheet for one of the pins on here, I was able to determine what each of these did and what kind of sensor was in here. I'll have details on that on the GitHub. But basically the resistance that these had on the original motherboard were 150 ohms and 5.6k ohms. So I'm just gonna keep it like that. Ooh, that's hot. Don't do that. Ooh. Okay, now we have the 150 ohm resistor between this pin, which should be the anode pin of the sensor, and the ground. So our next step will be to actually put some wires on here. Yellow for the output pin, and classic red and black for 3 volts and ground. Okay, so we got our adapter all wired up. We can attach it to the lens. There. Now our next step will be to connect our camera. So let's grab our camera. The part with this little attachment part will be facing up here. And mine are already stuck on here, but there will be 2 little rings that are meant to have the screws not fall. The screws we're going to use to mount the camera will be the ones that we took off this camera. So just have it oriented properly. Now you can see our camera through there. We're going to go ahead and connect our Pi and our camera. Once you've got it secured, make sure the cable goes in there. And then we're going to use these little pegs. We're going to secure this in place. And the point of these is to let you slide this into the case and hold the camera section of the insert in place without it falling forward. The wedges make it so that it's held in place from being pulled this way, and it gives this something to hold on to so that you can rotate the camera. Now at this point, I would again plug it in and test. So that's what I'm gonna do. Well, I just spent like 20 minutes troubleshooting this because I forgot to put the SD card at the back and it wouldn't boot. And I was like, what's wrong with it? Whatever. Now we will want to put our activity LED up here. I would put some super glue in it to hold it in place. It's not very secure. Okay, so I'll go over a bit how the wiring is going to work out. I'll go over how the webcam Pi project works, which will power this. By default, it uses pins 23, 24, and 26 for the logo LED, activity LED, and the sensor output pin. So what that means is that we're going to want to have this wired up to pin 23 and ground, this to 24 and ground, and this to ground, 3.3 volts, and the pin 26. At least for now, those are the only options for webcam Pi. There is no way to change those unless you build it yourself. The instructions for that are available on webcam Pi, so it should be very simple, and you would only need to change a few things in the build root project. So if you're comfortable with that and you want to use different pins, go ahead and do that. What this one does is it includes all the 3D models to be able to fit this in here, and a custom SD card image for PiSite, which will basically just change the name of the webcam on your computer. It'll be significantly easier if we put the wires through here instead of around here, because if we create a bulk across like along this edge, it'll be quite difficult to insert into the case. So let's leave that free and instead feed them through between, under the Pi, over the Pi, and in this thing, because this is where our back will lock on to later. This isn't gonna be a great hold, but it should be good enough, probably. There we go. We've got a good connection for these two cables now. If I can insert it into the sleeve of this and then solder it on and slightly in, and then let's get about yay much. Ooh! Well, we were able to get our resistor in. Now our ground will go in. Okay, that's good for our activity LED. And last but not least, let's do this one. So it'll be ground, output, and 3 volts. But 3 volts, we'll probably use the one up here for that. There we go. Now I should have probably used a different. This one needed to be way longer. Let's fix that. There we go, perfect. I think I'm gonna start with a 3 volt one because that one will be way easier. Okay, everything's wired up. So time for a real test, I guess. I already have the Pi-Sci version of webcam Pi on here. So as soon as I plug it in, all of these sensor thingies should be working. The lights should come on. This light should come on. So let's hope for the best. Okay, we get logo LED. That means software is running. Okay, turned it on. No activity LED because the sensor is closed. So we're gonna test 2 in 1. If this turns on, that means the sensor is also working. Perfect. Light is on and I can see the stream on my computer, so everything's working. Now we just gotta package it up in this case. So a quick showcase of what it ended up looking like. We've got motion this way and we've got motion this way. We've also got the sensor working, opens and closes, and it's obviously wired up to actually do everything it's supposed to. And then our LED at the back, our LED at the top, and we're at the last step we're gonna do is put the logo back on here. But for now, we're gonna I already have webcam Pi installed. You guys would install webcam Pi, and then we put it into the shell, install the last few bits, and we're done. To get the Pi-Sci image installed on your SD card, you just want to go to the repository, which I'll have a link in the description, and you'll head over to releases. The latest release will be the one that pops up here. You simply want to download your .image file. You can click on it. It'll download. If you're on Windows, you'll want to open Balena Etcher. You'll select your file, which for me is right here. You'll select your SD card and then just flash it. Once it's done, you can just close out, unplug your adapter, your SD card or whatever, and put it into the Pi, and it'll be done. Okay, here's our final view of it. And if you ever need to change any of the firmware or whatever, just pop the back off and it'll be easy to access the SD card. So this is what the camera looks like. My lighting's atrocious, so it'd probably look better if I had better lighting. But if you enjoyed, I hope you like and subscribe to see what I do next. And if you followed along, I hope your camera went well. And yeah, thank you for watching.